Godzilla King of the Monsters has finally arrived, and with it, we are lucky enough to receive the 9th iteration of King Ghidorah. The three-headed dragon has long been a favorite of both mine and Toho's, only sharing the spotlight with the other big three of the series, Godzilla, Mothra, and Rodan. After first having arrived on Earth during the Showa era as Ghidorah the three-headed monster, it has continued to torment Earth and its collection of giant creatures for decades. The evil space dragon would return in every era, stating its dominance and standing as one of Godzilla's deadliest foes. Today, in celebration of King of the Monsters and Ghidorah's return to the big screen, we're going to take a look at my list of the most powerful versions of Ghidorah on film. Instead of a top 5 like I did with the Big G, there are only 8 iterations of Ghidorah, 9 if you count its relative Ghidorah, and I will. So let's take a look at the rank of the 9 most powerful versions of the three-headed King Ghidorah. Before I begin, as always, this is just my opinion. There is no definitive list of the most powerful Ghidorahs from Toho or Legendary. That said, I hope this list is close to yours, and if it isn't, I'd love to hear about your ranking down in the comments. The first entry to this list may surprise some of you, and to be honest, it kinda surprised me. Let's begin at number 9 with King Ghidorah from GMK, Godzilla Mothra King Ghidorah, Giant Monsters All-Out Attack. GMK is one of my favorite films, and I love the role reversal with Godzilla and King Ghidorah switching places. Unfortunately, this take on the three-headed dragon was one of the few that was actually smaller than the Godzilla it would face. This version of the 3G would be tied for the shortest of the species, standing at a mere 50 meters tall, along with the second smallest wingspan and the lightest weight of all of them. Its size would hold this iteration back, and on top of that, the GMK Ghidorah was also light on regen powers and durability, making it stronger than most kaiju, yet still lacking when standing against its own kind. Flying in at number 8 is none other than the OG, King Ghidorah of the Showa era. To be honest, I had a hard time putting the Showa version of the King this low on the list. This was one version of the three-headed monster that could not be taken down alone. Unlike the Ghidorah of GMK, this dragon kaiju would be the largest of its era, standing at double the height of Godzilla at 100 meters tall. The only reason why the Showa version isn't higher up on the list is more due to its height and weight than its sheer power and intelligence. In fact, I'd say that the Showa Ghidorah ranks above the created ones of the HEISEI era if it weren't for their enormous size advantage. And speaking of that HEISEI era King Ghidorah, I've got MECHA King Ghidorah stepping into the number 7 spot. And right off, I know many of you think I'm crazy here because I'm listing the MECHA KG before the standard HEISEI Ghidorah, and that's not a mistake. I'll be honest, I've never been a big fan of its origin story. The Dorats are a bit goofy to be the start of the Destroyer of Worlds. This version would be one of the tallest so far at 150 meters, setting the standard for many of the future dragon kaiju relatives. So why am I putting the mech version lower on the scale? Well, to me, it was an inferior monster. The armor upgrades weren't enough to stand against the atomic breath of Godzilla for the added weight. I would also say that in my opinion that the replacement head's weapon wouldn't be as strong as the natural gravity beams of the other two heads. Not to mention, the center head, if like in other versions of Ghidorah, may be the leader or dominant head, so losing it could hold the beast back. So this would bring us to number 6, which of course is the HEISEI King Ghidorah. I won't go into too much detail here because really this is just MECHA King Ghidorah before Godzilla almost killed it. I'll just say that I'll take Ghidorah with all of its heads and a lighter weight over an Emmy piloted MECHA Ghidorah any day. Jumping ahead to number 5, we finally get a spot for the outsider on the list, Death Ghidorah, or Ghidorah. A relative of Grand King Ghidorah from the Rebirth of Mothra series, Death Ghidorah would introduce us to the quad stance 3Gs that would later pop back up with the KEIZER. Now Ghidorah is only 50 meters tall, but this kaiju is also 100 meters long, all the while having a small wingspan, yet packing the weight, coming in at only slightly lighter than the much taller HEISEI King Ghidorah. On top of its hefty four-legged stance, Ghidorah was also an offensive powerhouse, having abilities the earlier versions lacked. Death G had a variety of heavy thermal beam attacks, an electrical surge bite, as well as creating a shield for defense, and it can even create fissures in the earth, releasing molten rock that the kaiju can control and manipulate. To me, Death Ghidorah is a big step above the lower Ghidorahs on the list, and from here on out, the power raises significantly. At number 4 is none other than the modern type King Ghidorah, or more commonly known as Grand King Ghidorah. Size-wise, this is another anomaly on the list, as the Grand King Ghidorah stands at only 60 meters tall, with a tiny 80-meter wingspan, and yet it carries a respectable 50,000 metric ton weight. I originally had Grand KG a little lower on the list because of this size difference, but Toho has stated that Grand King Ghidorah is the more powerful relative of Des Ghidorah, so it must be the offensive and defensive capabilities that put this take on the kaiju so high on the list. Like all versions of Ghidorah, Grand is capable of emitting gravity beams. Unlike the other versions though, Grand was able to use teleportation and hypnosis on humans, and it could even create a dome to hold its human prey. The regeneration ability here was on overdrive, allowing Ghidorah to grow back from a small piece of its tail, and it was ultra durable, with only the armor type Mothra being able to damage it, and Armor Mothra has been speculated by fans to be one of the most powerful kaiju in the entire Toho universe. Making its debut on the list at number 3 is the newcomer, the MONSTERVERSE King Ghidorah. Standing tall as the largest physical Ghidorah in the entire species, this titan was huge, coming in at 158.8 meters tall, the closest thing to Godzilla Earth, and it weighed a massive 127,963.8 metric tons. In reference and homage to both the Showa and HEISEI eras, this iteration of the Big 3G would not only take Godzilla and Mothra to defeat, but it would take 2 separate power-ups to Godzilla, the Burning Like Fire stage and the Mothra power-up, in order to do it. This beast was durable, showing immunity to the Oxygen Destroyer missile and crazy level regen when it was able to regenerate important body parts like its head after it was misplaced by the Big G. And here we are at number 2, the most powerful Ghidorah in the live action film universe, the KEIZER. Using a 4-legged stance like Des Ghidorah, the KEIZER was said by Toho themselves at the time to be the strongest form of Ghidorah ever. The thing was massive, standing just shorter than the legendary at 140 meters tall, yet it was also 150 meters in length. That's as long as the HEISEI Ghidorah is tall. The KEIZER would possess anti-gravity beams like Grand did, but these actually lived up to the name, able to lift kaiju up and toss them around like toys. The creature could siphon energy from Godzilla in a bite and was capable of transformation, starting off as Monster X. It was also ultra durable, with Godzilla not being able to do any damage until getting the KEIZER power-up. At the top of the list, coming in from another dimension, is the God of the Void, the Golden Demise, the animated King Ghidorah. To be honest, we don't even know what its true size and capabilities are, and for that matter, could we even understand them if we knew? This thing is interdimensional. Ghidorah has always been known as a kaiju that was capable of destroying entire planets, while the animated one is responsible for the death of thousands of planets. This multiversal traveler is capable of attacking other kaiju while remaining intangible, meaning it can't be touched or interfered with, let alone fought. Instead of the gravity beams all other versions would possess, this Ghidorah would take gravity to a whole new level and would enter other dimensions through portals that were similar to a black hole, bending time and space to its will. An ability that we see in play when it attacks the Eritrum and the crew learns of their death before it even happens, as the gravity of Ghidorah is bending space-time. It can both drain energy as well as discharge it from the same bite or even with simple contact with its body. The only reason Earth Godzilla was able to defeat it is Haruo was able to kill Mephes, the guidance for Ghidorah, making it susceptible to the physics of Earth's dimension, allowing Earth G to destroy the portals. The interdimensional Ghidorah is listed to have a 20-kilometer length, but I don't think you could easily measure this kaiju if you could even call it one. For one, there could have been much more of the body behind those portals that we couldn't see, and on top of that, for all we know, this is just one shape that Ghidorah is able to assume. And that's it for me, guys. The 9 members of the Ghidorah species ranked from weakest to most powerful. I'm sure that many of you see the list differently than I do, and I would love to hear your reasons why, along with any other questions you have. down in the comments.